Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are usually two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. But right now we are three friends. Plus a beautiful dog in the background who wants to make sure they are heard on recording.
Four friends.
And we're always a fan of dogs, so they're definitely a friend. But we are three friends because we are joined by Erin Stavs, who wrote The Marked Princess. So
yay, welcome.
Yay.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being on. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the books you've been writing or have written?
I absolutely can. So I'm Erin, or EP Stavs, and I mostly write, I have a finished YA fantasy series. That's the one you were reading. Is from. I also write fairy tale romance with like kind of a fantasy twist to it. And I've written a thriller, and I also like to write short stories, mostly gothic horror. So I'm kind of all over the place, and that's just kind of what keeps me writing. Keeps it fresh. I also write a little bit of YA contemporary, which is in the works. So
awesome.
Well, that's exciting. Congratulations.
Can we find all of your work under EP Stavs, or do you have different pen names for different genres? Okay.
It's all under EP Stavs, and it's all currently only on Amazon.
Oh,
okay.
Good to know. You are famously the only book that I think we will actually get Laura's mom to read. So.
My mom loved the book.
Yeah.
Okay.
She read it with, she gave you the biggest compliment. She said, "You are ageless, much like your character Lily." So.
Yeah, we went on a road trip, and so I said, "Hey, I've got to read this book for the podcast." I said, "Would you mind reading it aloud to me while I'm driving?" She's like, "Sure." So she's reading it to me, and then at one point she flips back and saw your photo, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, I think she's ageless. I think she's like the character Lily."
I think I have one of those like cartoony pictures in there, actually. So it's not very accurate.
You look very young. So
well, yes,
that's
will do that.
You look very young.
Exactly what you want to hear on the podcast. We're going to come have you on and talk only about your face. No, but those books all sound wonderful. We love a good YA.
I am always looking for a thriller. So Hannah knows my issues with thrillers letting me down. So I'm always looking for something to try and get back into the thriller genre.
Yes. But we read the first book in your YA finished series of, I am so sorry, I'm going to mispronounce so many things. Shendri series?
Yes, Shendri. And, it's kind of one of those words where you come up with a word and then it sticks. And later you're trying to say it out loud and you've already published the book and you're like, oh, that's tricky.
We are famously bad at pronouncing names.
We're so bad. We did the Wheel of Time series as our first series. And like for the first couple episodes, I called like one of the characters who's named Nynaeve. And like I called her that until I was corrected. And then all of a sudden we just made a switch and never mentioned it again. So
until now.
Yeah, until now. So if you go back to our old stuff, we mispronounce things all the time, but we try our best. And we did say like, we were like, we're going to have the author on, she will correct us. And then in the character episodes, we will have all the pronunciations right for the most part. So could you tell us a little bit about like, what made you like decide to write the Shendri series, like how you developed the characters, especially in the first book, and just kind of like what inspired this series for you?
Absolutely. So the Shendri series, that was The Marked Princess was my first book I ever actually finished writing. And it's very reflective of what I was reading at the time. And I think that's why I love it. And it has its own unique spin, but there's also a very traditional kind of story arc to it. It's got a lot of classic fantasy tropes in it, and it's just all stuff I loved at that time. And really, it's like if I'm going to write a book, this is all got to be in there. I got to have a sassy, heroine. I've got to have the brooding guard who's secretly in love with her, forbidden love. And then I'm also really into like anime and stuff and manga. So like the Celestial Maiden kind of, and Selkies. I love that. So that all of that stuff is just like kind of got pulled in, and then I started writing, and and it turns into its own story. And I also I really love series where each story is its own story. So like there's a new character, but it's a character you've maybe already met, and it ties in together with that kind of overarching plot, and that it's just something I really enjoy. So that's what I wrote.
That's awesome.
Awesome. So were there any like specific books that, because you mentioned you were reading a lot of things and they kind of like influenced you to write? Because when I was reading it, I'm like, I'm getting a lot of like Ella Enchanted and like Shrek vibes because I love those movies. And I'm like, oh, I love this book because it reminds me of those.
Well, I do love Shrek. I actually didn't see Ella Enchanted until after I wrote all these books, but I can see the kind of connection with it. I definitely like fairy tale like vibes. So like, even though it's not a fairy tale, I think because I read so many fairy tale retellings, some of those vibes get pulled in. And I would say I was reading a lot of Melanie Cellier, who is probably my absolute favorite. And I believe she's an indie author, which is hard to believe because she's at the point where she puts out a new book and she's got like 800 reviews. I mean, she's killing it. But awesome. She's just, she really, I think, defined a lot of my writing style.
Awesome.
We really loved your writing style. We loved like the banter between all the characters. Like that's so fun.
They're funny characters.
Yeah, they're so funny. And we really liked like the different friendships versus like romances. And they had like all their own unique like style and feelings towards them. So that was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I know you like mentioned the fact that you had like the sun and the moon goddess, and like what made you like, what kind of drew that kind of storytelling to you to have these like two kind of different characters, and even like with the development of the big bad in this book that was hinted at that we will see in future books, like what made you decide to like kind of have him intrinsically linked to those two like overarching stories?
Honestly, I think I just started writing the backstory and it just kind of came out. Like I don't know as I really had once again I would say a little bit of Ceres. It's an old manga series where there's like a celestial maiden whose robes are stolen. I think that probably somewhere in the back of my mind, because I wasn't thinking about it, but you know, everything you've read and everything you've seen, it's all there. But I don't know, a lot of it just kind of came out as I was writing. And Bade actually is probably one of my favorite characters in the series. And I know a lot of the people who've completed the series were very invested in him by book 4. He takes a much bigger role later in the series.
I love when there's like an introductory character who's like kind of filtered in and he's going to get more developed. So like, I was going to ask who your favorite character was to develop. Was it Bade, like overall?
Probably, yes. He probably has the biggest story arc for someone who's so like you barely see him in book 1, and then a little bit in book 2 and a little bit more in book 3, and then book 4 is where he really gets his time to shine and you see really what's going on behind the scenes with him. And I don't want to spoil anything.
No,
but he's a very fun character, and I've had more than one person tell me they're like, I need a book just about Bade. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna write it, sorry. I've moved on.
Get some fan fiction up, right? Fan fiction for my books. No, that's awesome. And
were there any characters that you felt like were really connected to you as the author? Because I know we talk a lot about like self-insert characters that authors write. Were there any characters in this series that you felt connected to, like that kind of had a lot of you in them?
I think all my characters have a little bit of me in them. But it's hard. But then I'm like, oh no, they're too cool. Like, no, I'm just probably not. I wish I was all my characters. Maybe they're like the characters that people I would want to be or hang out with.
Sure.
But
I like that, writing the characters you want to be. I think that's a nice thought.
Definitely.
Do you have a character that you like struggle with where you're like, oh, I just know, like, I can't get to your personality, or even like, I have your personality, but I struggle with who you are as a person. Like, you frustrate me.
Maybe in some of my current whips, some of my works in progress right now, and they get kind of put to the side. But I think in the Shendri series, like, I had a good feeling for a lot of them right in book 1. So by the time I got to them, I was just excited to write their stories. So
exciting.
What's like your process for kind of like developing stories? We've had a couple of author interviews where people have said, you know, I like to create a playlist and kind of work off a playlist, or I know people make like big diagram where they kind of like plot it all out. I know everybody has a different process. So what was that kind of like for you making this series?
I feel like you just said it. My goodness. I am definitely the type who starts with music.
Okay.
For any book I'm about to write, it's like, okay, I got to find that song. Sometimes it's only just one that has a vibe.
Mhm.
And it has a vibe for what I see in this book, whatever the tiny idea I have is. And then I'll either sit in a dark room. I know Mark Princess, I think I just sat in the dark with my headphones and a notebook nearby, like for hours. And but I also like to go for walks. That's more frequent now with my headphones on, because then they say that when you walk, you get more creative. I don't know how legitimate that is, but something about the act of walking. And then I get my notebook. I keep one like always a notebook nearby, and I just write my random bits in there. And sometimes I'll outline chapters, but I usually don't get very far in that. I do the diagrams, but I do like a word web, like here's things I want to happen in the story. And then I kind of try to put them in order, like, okay, this would happen before that. But it's usually fairly vague. Once I have just a basic skeleton of an idea, I kind of know where I'm going. I'll sit down and start writing, and then I just pants it from there.
That's awesome. Do you remember what like song you had for the Mark Princess, or even the Shendri series as a whole, like something that really got you?
I know the Marked Princess started with a lot of Billie Eilish, and it was actually really dark. So a lot of like If You See Me in a Crown or Bury My Friend, and like just that all in particular, like it was a lot of like dark vibes and a lot of dark ideas. It got lighter because when I write, I'm very cheeky, and I like just to, you know, even when I'm writing gothic horror, I'm like cheeky, and it's hard for me to like be super serious, but it's still, I think you see the dark vibes in there.
Oh, for sure. There are some dark things that happen in the book, even when there are also like the really cute moments where like, oh, they're getting together now and they love each other.
There's no one else in the room but them in this moment. But yeah, it does have darker themes. And I love Billie Eilish. That's like, I always think about Mindy Kaling talked about when she runs like on a treadmill, she always has to make up a story in her head where it's like, my husband was murdered and I need to avenge his death. And like, I always think about that when I'm running, and I'm like, who could I have, like, what if I read into a lost love? What would happen? And so I feel like walking, it's very much that. I feel those vibes so much.
Yeah, definitely.
So like, I know you said that this was all the stuff you were reading, but like Joss seems like a headstrong character, but you also like walk a really fine line with her where she like is very active, but she also like knows her duty as a queen. And was it fun like making her a character that considered both those traits and kind of had her walking that fine line?
Yeah, I really, I definitely, because she would have grown up and she would have responsibilities, and she respected her father. And I also liked making her father not like a total douchebag king. He like, for the most part, kind of respected, that she was a female and that she still had a voice, and, but yeah, the duty and honor thing definitely came into play a lot, obviously. And, yeah, I wanted her to not be like one of those people who's just always selfishly doing whatever they want, even though those are valid characters because those are realistic. I mean, that's fine. For her, she was my first main character, and she was going to be the person I wanted her to be in every book I'm reading. Right. So, yeah. So she definitely got like a little bit of a pedestal as compared to maybe other characters I've written, but
I also think that's a really effective like first character in a series, because then like her main love interest is also pretty like duty bound and like very, respectful of that. And to see how they'll interact with new characters coming and like how you'll sprinkle them in, and they're like how they'll interact with Lily or other future characters. I think I'm really excited to see as like your first book versus the fourth book and how they've grown. So that's exciting.
Yeah. I know there's one character in there that like not a lot of people always like him, Edmund, but then I had those characters who was like, oh, you really did him dirty in book 1. And I'm like, well, wait to get to book 3.
We need
what I kind of like is how some of these what I kind of like is how some of these characters throw you for a loop. Like at the beginning, Hannah and I both were like trying to figure out like who's going to be the bad character, and Hannah immediately thought it was going to be Lady Meridell. I mean, I heard Lord Burgundy's name thrown around too many times that I was nervous about him. And I thought it was interesting, though, towards the end, how this is major spoiler, how the person we think is going to be the big bad ends up not being quite as big and bad. But does that character kind of come into play in the rest of the series?
Oh, are we talking about like
the prince?
Oh no, he's pretty
kinda
much done. I mean, they do refer to his family and everything, but there's a book 2 has its own kind of villain again, but also in the background and tied in, especially with the love interest for book 2 is connected to Bade and the main villain. But there's and then I think in book 3 it starts getting more towards the end and it kind of start, okay, here's the main story, let's finish up.
We made jokes before we got on about mispronunciation and everything, but like I called him Stefan for the entire plot, and then at the end I was like, his name was Stefan. It was 100% Stefan.
Really
I don't know. Yeah, I know. It's like, I don't know, but we made a joke that he like gave us Stefan from SNL vibes. So it's just like a ridiculous human being.
Well, maybe he went through a phase when he was younger where he's like, no, call me Stefan. I mean, that could be part of his backstory. I could see that.
He has such vibes of being like that character that's like, I know exactly what I'm doing, but really it's just kind of like rolling through these things and making so many mistakes that you're like, you don't have a clue. Please stop.
Right.
There were so many
like one of the villains from like I don't know if you've seen like what is it called, that medieval kind of like they sang a lot and it's crap. Well, let's say he's like Prince John from Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
But that's not the one I'm trying to think of. But Valiant. Did you see Valiant? Where there's
Gallavant.
Gallavant. There we go.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Someone from like there.
I love
that's
that
very
show.
much the vibes I was getting.
Yes, just like a ridiculous. There were so many parts where, like, on the podcast episode, I remember being like, he should be a little bit more scared. Like, why isn't he more scared? He just has like all the authority in the world. So I know, like, this is like pretty like a romantic series, or like how it's kind of sold as like romantic YA. Is there like a favorite romantic interest that you like to make, or a trope you like to talk about, or like, something to write about?
I will say my favorite romance is in The Searching Songbird, which is book 2.
Okay.
And that is more of it's not really enemies to lovers. It's maybe forbidden love. That's definitely a thing, but like more where like you see right off the bat, it's not a spoiler, that the guy who's sent to like kidnap Lily and take her to Bade ends up, falling for her. And she's like, la, 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 I'm Lily and I love everybody. But then, of course, bad things happen. But that kind of like, I love them together so much. And I know that's most people, they tell me, no, that's my favorite romance is in book 2, but maybe not their favorite book, but that's their favorite like couple. And
there are different versions of favorites for romance.
It's hard to pinpoint what exactly about that though makes it my favorite romance. And I think it's just because he falls so hard, and he's also like, oh shit, like, I shouldn't be doing this. Like,
I love that.
I love a good tortured, love interest.
A little broody, a little bit dark. I like that.
Mm-hmm. We get that in Alex too. So and there's a little bit of forbidden love there. I mean, her dad was like, no, you have a sense of duty. Like, you shouldn't be her lover. So we have a little forbidden love there too.
Yeah. A little different style, but that's
sure.
I was still probably, like, my favorites, it was only book 2.
So I know you've written like for a couple different genres. This is something we've been talking about recently. Like, what do you feel is the difference between like a YA book you're writing versus like adult fiction or adult fantasy or like, Gothic? Like, what kind of is the line when you're writing, or is it just kind of like, oh, this just feels like it goes more for YA? Like,
that's a really good question when it comes to like YA and what's not YA, because my most recent release, Rest in Peace, Viola Winkle, I was originally thinking it was going to be adult fantasy romance, like with the word adult in there. And I'm writing it, and I wrote the spicier scenes in there. But then when I had like my ARC readers and stuff and beta readers, they're like, they liked it, but they're also like, well, it feels like a YA. but with spicy scenes. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? There's something about my writing that just apparently when you're reading it feels like a young adult novel. It's like, well, she's 26 or 25, and it's just a story about like an older person.
Yeah.
And she's doing things. I don't know. To me, if you go by like what they say, it's like it's YA if the characters are in a certain age range.
Okay.
Well, is it though? Because I ended up actually taking out like one of the spicier scenes because I just like, all right, well, I'm just gonna make it fantasy romance and I'm gonna take the adult out of it because people are gonna be like, oh, this isn't adult enough for me,
Right.
And then but also it's not YA because there's some language and situations in there that's a little older. It's a really fine line because to me I was just like, oh, it's age. It's the age of the characters. And the coming of age story is it not a coming of age story kind of thing. But then I get feedback that's like, this feels YA. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I don't think we've been able to distill down what YA is to people. So I totally get what you're saying.
It's really,
and I think it's hard too, because like really the level of what kids feel comfortable reading depends on the kid or the adult too. I mean, I know personally, like I don't feel that comfortable reading a lot of like really spicy stuff. So I don't know. It just kind of depends on the person, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if it needs to, like, if it doesn't have a lot of language and scenes, is that not? Apparently that means it's not adult. I don't know. Yeah. I'm just like, what?
Well, and someone I recently heard was like big emotions are very YA, like people who have like 0 to 60 or like they have big swings, that is more YA because when you're a teenager, like you need that like big emotion to actually feel invested in the story because your emotions are so big. So it's an interesting discussion on like what makes a book YA, but I knew you said you had written for both, so I was just curious.
Yeah.
But
well, I think I tend to have a kind of a brisk, I want to say brisk, and I use a lot of banter in my writing style. It's fast paced and I don't like use like a ton of prose and stuff. So I think that's probably why it just feels more YA.
Sure.
I liked the brisk pace. I thought it was fun. It was very nice. Yeah. Got me in, got me enjoying the characters, and I knew everything I needed to know about them. So what made you decide to like go through the self-publishing process, and like how did you go about that decision?
I decided to self-publish. I think it was what I realized in the fangirling again here. I realized Melanie Cellier was a self-published author because I was originally writing and I just assumed I was going to go the traditional route and query and everything like that. And then I kind of, people talk to me about indie publishing and everything. And because your initial reaction is, oh, does that just mean I'm giving up? Does, like, I don't think it's good enough. And it's like, so that initial reaction of self-publish isn't good enough, which is just garbage. I mean, it's amazing, but I didn't know that at the time. That's just your initial reaction when you're not familiar with it. Right. And so then I was like, when I realized someone I really love her books was just putting them out on her own, I'm like, that's awesome. So then, I'm getting into the writing community on Twitter and I'm reading a lot more indie books. And I'm like, these are really good books and you get all this control. And so I'm like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go for it. And it is so much work. It's so much work, but it is good. I like that I can just write whatever book it is I want to write and just, that's what I'm going with.
What are some of the main ways that you have to promote your book? Because I think when people think of self-publishing, they just think of like making the book and then it's available, but there's so many other steps. So what all do you have to do to promote your book and to get it out there?
I mostly do social media. I haven't done a lot of paid advertising because I just feel like I have no idea and I'm just going to end up spending a bunch of money and not getting anything back. So someday I'll know the secret to where to do that. But I'm very active on Twitter. That was my first platform, and just engaging with people and not just like spamming. I have a book, like really becoming a member of that community. They're other indie authors are very supportive, and that really helps, especially when that first book comes out. Like you need to get those reviews and you need to have some people are getting it, and then Amazon's like, okay, maybe I'll show it to some other people, right? Like, what's the secret to getting Amazon to be like, here's a book you could read, right? So it's hard to say. So that's really helpful. I'm also on Instagram, but I'm not very good at it. And I did join TikTok, and I was really gung-ho with TikTok, and I haven't done it for weeks now because we got this new dog, and I'm busy, and it's like that one thing I didn't have energy for. But it is, I know people have said they've had a lot of success with it. I didn't notice a huge change, but I will literally do just about anything and try it.
I mean, TikTok is huge with dogs, so just make sure those books are in the background and just get all the videos of your dogs.
Train the dog to be like reading the book, different situations.
We have a friend who like her dog will bite the corners of her book, so you just need to treat your dog to like, oh, just nibble on the top, and then here's a video of it. But that's awesome. What is some advice you can give to people who are thinking about self-publishing their own novel?
I would say absolutely just get in the writing community, talk to other people who've done it, because there's a lot of like things that you don't know about, or like, I mean, if you just ask, like if you went on there and posted like, what are some things to watch out for, common mistakes, people will respond, and they will give you this invaluable information that if like, I didn't know you shouldn't hit tab in your Word document. When you're writing your story, if you do your indents with tab, that's how I grew up. I'm like 39. I was putting 2 spaces after the period for a while. Don't do that. Just little things like that. But I hit tab through the whole thing, and I went and I did it in Kindle Create. I made my book, and I put it out there, and the paperback's fine, comes out fine. And then someone mentions to me on the ebook, they're like, "Wow, these indents are like half the screen, like deep." And I look at it, I'm like, what in the world? So then I look it up, and they're like, oh, if you use a tab key, it like messes with the indents, even though you don't see it necessarily in Kindle Create, it looks fine. But when it puts it into an ebook, it looks different. And it's only because of doing that tab key. And I had no idea. And I wouldn't, luckily someone told me. So then I had to go back and take my document, take out all the tabs, and redo every single one in the entire book.
How frustrating.
So, I mean, it was such a stressful, because I'm also trying to get it done so I can re-upload the new one, because it's already out there. It's my first book, and I'm like panicking. I'm like, oh my gosh. Oh, no. So just things like that, it's just nice to have that community to talk to about.
Well, we've talked about one of the best things about Twitter is like the writing community, especially with the indie authors, because everyone is so great there and welcoming, such as yourself, which we have interacted with you, and everyone's just so great. So that's great.
Yeah, there's a lot of indie authors on Twitter, I've noticed. So definitely a good community there.
Yeah. And what is some advice you have for people who like want to start writing a book and they don't know where to start?
I guess just start thinking about like if you have any ideas, just writing them down. Okay, what genre do you want to write in? I love the music. When I'm writing short stories, I'll be looking at, okay, the prompt is full moon, under a full moon. That's what you have to write for. It's like, okay, so that I'll find the right song, and I'll just listen to it until something pops in my head, and then go from there. But like I love writing short stories to prompts, but sometimes maybe that's how you get started. Maybe you start writing short stories and then you go from there and you get comfortable. Sometimes just finishing something, knowing you can write from the beginning to the end of something, and that confidence is just, maybe that's what you need. I don't know. I didn't start with a short story, but I love that.
That's amazing. This is coming out in November. Have you ever done like the NaNoWriMo or anything like that? Or is it just like, no, I'm just writing?
I tried doing like a Camp Nano April edition, and I think I stopped caring somewhere in the middle. I write, the girls are in school. I have 2 kids, and they're both in school this year. So I actually get it like a chunk of time to write. I wouldn't call myself a full-time author because I mean, we're talking like a few hours by the time I see them off, and then, you know, lunchtime workout, and then I have a dog and things going on. Then I have to pick them up again. So I have time where I dedicate to writing, and I've tried doing like, I need this many words before, and sometimes that just stresses me out. And sometimes you just need to be like, okay, I'm writing, and I'm
Sure.
writing, and you know, and that's good enough.
Yeah. I think
What are
that's
some ways
healthy.
that we can, as like podcasters and readers, that we can support you as an indie author, other indie authors, and promote your work?
I think just reading and then following through those reviews. I mean, the reviews
Okay.
are so hard to get, you know, for the amount of people who've read my books, and then the number of reviews I have. It's just like, I mean, I'm doing well compared to like, but still, it's just, that's so hard to get. And reading and reviewing
Sure.
is just such a big way to support, especially like I have Kindle Unlimited. So,
Mhm.
I mean, if you're buying 3 or more books, that's like, you know, it's the same price. So, and I read
Mhm.
a lot. So that's a big one. Other ways, I mean, just, I don't know, going on and saying a nice comment, you know, about, you know, interacting with them on Twitter if you're doing stuff like that. It's just nice. It's nice to
Okay.
know people are out there.
As someone who
Awesome.
like you work from start to finish on these books, like what's the part that like brings you the most like surprising joy when you're working on something and you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened, like in a writing process?
In the writing process,
Mhm.
like when I'm writing
Yeah.
and I wrote something, I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Mhm.
I mean, every day, please. Every word that comes out of my mouth onto the paper. I find usually when I'm going back to do like a snippet, like a Saturday snippet or something like that, and then I'm like rereading something, and I'm like, this is good. I need to share the entire chapter.
Oh, that's
That
awesome.
brings me a lot of joy.
I think
So-
if you're able to reread it and get joy out of it like that, I think that's like the key, because I know that I've tried to write things before and then I've reread it and thought, Laura, you're such an idiot. That sounds so stupid. So if you're able to do that and like bring joy to yourself doing it, one, it makes it a lot easier to work, and two, you know that it's going to be good, because if you're able to enjoy it, you know other people will too. So that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is awesome. We're having such a good time talking to you about that. Like, we really enjoyed this book so much.
Oh, it was great.
It was
great.
so good. I'm trying to think if there was anything that we needed to know. I think we're just excited to continue on with this like series. It seems like so much
Oh, yeah.
fun. Are there any work in progresses that like, or works in progress that you're really excited about right now that you can share with us, or is it all like under wraps?
Oh, they're not under wraps. I just have a lot. And I think I'm confusing everyone on Twitter because I like to talk about my whips and everything with the community, especially with the fantasy indies.
Mhm.
There's like a hashtag, and I swear I'm talking about a different one like every month right now because I'm in that weird stage. But I have one. The one that's the farthest along is another fairy tale retelling. It's Puss in Boots meets like Twelfth Night,
Ooh.
and
I'm in.
and it's got like a gender swap thing, like and I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's another very cheeky one, and it's dual point of view, and the main character is kind of she reminds me a little bit of Joss because she's got that
Okay.
kind of sass about her, but she's also has this great friendship that I really like seeing her and Isabella really close together. I like writing really positive female friendships.
Mhm.
And also then
Dig
the
it.
love interest, Dante, who's just like total tongue tied around women and has a horrible time talking to them, tying into that like 12th night idea.
Yeah.
And he's got a friendship too they're really strong. So I got like these two friends going on, and I got a cat because I always seem to have some sort of animal involved
I
in
love
all
that.
my whips. I know one thing I'm trying to do more in like this book and the books I'm writing now are getting a bit more like LG. I never can get it all out, getting more representation in there and get some more
Sure.
characters who have some stuff like that in there. Cause I just didn't think about it. It's not, I can't think of any characters in the Shendri series that really represent that. And I'm like, oh, like it wasn't like intentional, just like that's how it came out. And it's like, okay. So I'm trying to add more diversity into my characters as well.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there like anything, because like the Shendri series you put out, is there anything that like now that you're working on stuff besides like the LGBTQ stuff that you're
so
like,
hard to say.
yeah, no, it's fine. I work in discrimination law, so I can spout it off really quickly. But is there like something you've noticed about your writing that you're like, oh, I've changed so much when it comes to like specific characters, like adding more friendships or doing this? Is there something you've noticed about yourself as you've grown and put out more works?
Probably should. Other than like just trying to add more diversity. I think I have my endings. But I mean, it's not my characters. Like I've definitely spent a lot of time trying to not rush my endings because it's a thing. It's a thing that I have. It's probably where I struggle the most is like I get really excited to be almost done with a book, and I don't like reading really long, drawn out endings. But still, got to find the balance. So it doesn't have to be long and drawn out, but like maybe not writing it so quickly. And I think I've gotten a lot better at that as an author. And it's just really just reeling myself in and thinking about it, and
well, and also getting used to using like beta readers to like read through stuff, and getting feedback is always helpful to learn about yourself as a writer. So.
Right. How to get the feedback you need other than just I liked it. Like, oh, great. I need more.
Do you have any favorite indie authors that you are like huge fans of their work and everything that you look out for?
Oh, too many. If I start listing them, I'm gonna get in trouble because I'll forget someone, but definitely Michele Quirke is like my soulmate. And we met on Twitter, and she lived in the area near me. So we actually got to meet up, and we got to be really good friends. And I really like her work, and she's so supportive, and she's so wonderful. Although right now she's just playing D&D all the time and out writing that third book. But I love Michele Quirke, and I have this, we made this book club together on Twitter, and I've met I just have there's this amazing group of writers in there, and we read these indie books together, and we talk about them. And that's also, by the way, a great way to hone your skills as a writer is getting together with other writers and talking about a book you all read, because suddenly all these things come out and you're like, let me write that down for later. Like, keep in mind, because we will find everything. It's just like,
I never do that in my writing, notes, take it out of your book.
I mean, it's amazing because, like we all love the book, and then you get on and you're just like nitpicking. It's like, never invite the author on there because
this is a safe space. You shouldn't be here.
It's great. It's a great way to kind of like get ideas for your own writing.
That's awesome.
See what other people are thinking. But yes, lots of wonderful people.
Oh, good. Well, we definitely enjoyed this indie book. Can I ask you, this is something we often ask people, but what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying right now?
I had just finished The Midnight Club on Netflix.
Okay.
Did you see it?
I haven't seen it, but I watched the preview.
It's like one of the ones where it's like, I mean, at any time you could come in and I'm either going to be like bawling or like under my covers. But it's like such an emotional, just the premise of like all these like younger people with terminal illness. I mean, you're in for it right there.
Right.
But it was really good. It was just the level of horror that I could watch because I don't do well with horror.
Same. That's why I held off.
Yep. It's like, it's right there. I mean, there's some like jump scares and there's some stuff, but there's also, it's just a lot about like emotions and relationships. And I really enjoyed it. I just finished reading Haze for book club last month, and that was really fun, by Rebecca Crunden. She does the indie book spotlight on Twitter.
Okay. Yeah.
I really liked that. It was definitely a little dark, but it was really well written and really compelling. So I really enjoyed that as far as books go.
Cool.
And just, right now I'm just trying to train my dog because she's a shelter dog. So she's 3 years old and she's from the shelter. We've had her for like 3 weeks. So we don't know her history. And it's just like, she's amazing in the house and with the kids. And then you take her on a walk and she's just a nightmare. And so So that's taken up a lot of my extra thought process these few weeks.
That is always, I have a shelter dog as well. So
Same.
I feel for you. It gets better. I'm like 6 years into owning her and she's like a dream of a dog, but there are always challenges.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like the process from adopting the dog to like getting them to kind of decompress and be a normal dog is kind of long. So
Yeah.
At least it seemed like that when I adopted Briggs. So
I recently saw a TikTok where a woman was like, I just love when your shelter dog gets bougie and you know that you like healed their inner puppy, where it's like, I'm not going to do that. It's not a good enough treat. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like every time my dog just climbs all over you for attention, I'm like, oh, her inner puppy is healed. She feels comfortable asking for love. Like that's so sweet. But can you tell our listeners where they can find you on all the social media platforms so they can learn more about your works in progress and everything in between?
Absolutely. On Twitter, I'm at E and then like a _, Stavs, because it was the first thing I got on and I'd never been on Twitter and I didn't know you could like change it. I just took whatever they gave me. So that's that. And then on TikTok and Instagram, I'm at e.p.stavs. So just like my author name, at epstavs.
Okay.
I also have a website, epstavs.com. And this will be too late because it won't air in time, but I'm going to be at Geek Girl Con next weekend. So
we will put up some notices on Instagram and Twitter.
Yes, we will put up some notices
next
so that
Saturday.
People knew. Yeah, next or the Saturday before this. I hope you guys were all there, all people in the area, and you said hi to her. And while you're at it, make sure that you are buying all of her books. These are wonderful. We loved them so much. Your listeners, your readers and supporters were so great during Indie Mission voting. Like I got so many DMs where they're like, I'm voting for the March Princess. Like everyone was really on board.
The voting is confidential, people. Not supposed to tell.
Well, there was some confusion, I think, in the Instagram. We had a lot of trouble with that. And we're like, how do you vote? We found out we couldn't really vote from the computer. Like we had to do it on the mobile app or else you couldn't, because like on the computer. So that's, I think, why people would be like messaging the March Princess.
That's so amazing.
I don't know how to do it. And then I'm like, okay, I think we did.
It was just app confusion. I got it.
It is hard. We do recognize that like a lot of indie supporters are on Twitter, but we are also like pure Instagram millennial girlies. So we can't take it off.
We love Instagram so much.
That's how I won. So
yeah,
it was in Instagram. So I'll take it. Thank goodness.
I remember our last indie author winner was like, I don't know how to work Instagram, but people figure it out and vote. So like, you're not the first author to be like, how does the Instagram voting work?
The real key to winning, learning how it works and then coaching everyone through.
Here are all the steps to actually vote for the March Princess.
Yep. Here's what you need to do. You need to get on. You need to click here. You need to click here.
I need to like put out this like little digital tutorial or something for next time. But I hope everyone has already picked up her book. Erin is wonderful. She just joined us to chat about her book and we loved it so much. We thought it was wonderful. So we just
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for writing this wonderful series.
Yes.
And this has been a wonderful Indie Mission. So I can't wait to continue on with the Shendri series.
Same.
Thank you guys.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.